It's true. We all have stress in our lives. That is one thing that we absolutely cannot get rid of, right? You're never going to have no stress. But how do you know what stage of stress that you're in? And if you're unsure what I mean by stage of stress, you definitely want to go back and watch last week's video that I'm actually going to link in the description for you to know what are the stages of stress and how is that really determined? How do we kind of move through those different stages of stress? So really quickly and kind of a short recap. So in general, we come in contact and have stressors in our lives every day that are emotional and physical. Our body reacts to these stressors by trying to kind of mobilize it, if you will, and it uses all of its available energy that it has to help the body come back to sense of balance. But sometimes our bodies just don't have enough energy to do that, and it has to adapt. Our body has to adapt. So it's really this adaptation that causes our body to move through the different stages of stress, depending on how long it's had to adapt and how much energy is there. So again, if you haven't seen that video from last week, go back, watch it, and learn more about the different stages of stress. I'm going to link that in the description under this video. So how do you know, though, which stage of stress that you're in? If you watch that video, you're going to be like, okay, well, now how do I know? So I did list a few physical symptoms that are associated with each stage, but let's look at it a little bit more. So I'm gonna kind of break this down into two different sections. So there's physical symptoms and then there's metabolic patterns. So let's look at the physical symptoms really quick. And this might be somewhat of a review from the last video, but I'm definitely going to share a lot more about how you would know other than symptoms in the metabolic patterns. So kind of a recap: physical symptoms, alarm stage. That's the first stage of stress. So there's rapid heartbeat, there's higher blood pressure and blood sugar because your body's trying to get ready to go. You're jazzed. You're trying to get ready to just fight the tiger, run away, etc. So you have a higher body temperature. Sometimes you have more frequent bowel movements. Let's say like 3 to 5 per day versus less than that. Or you could have even more than 3 to 5 a day. You could have upwards of, 7 or 8. It's just more than you would think would be normal. Your cortisol really is high all day long, higher than what it should be. Our cortisol should have a pattern to it that goes throughout the day. So it should be highest in the morning and then slowly dwindle throughout the day and be lowest at night. And then overnight, it creeps back up and then it's highest in the morning. So that's our circadian rhythm. That's part of how our body is just meant to function, right? We're supposed to have energy in the morning to get things done throughout the day and then wind down at night to go to sleep. So that is the alarm stage. So what about the resistance stage? This is the next stage of stress. And this stage can actually go on for a lot longer period of time. Typically, you're not going to stay in the alarm stage a super long time because your body just can't withstand that. It doesn't have enough energy. But the resistance stage is where people stay the longest. So sometimes your body will still have energy left in this stage, but a lot of times the reserves are dwindling. And so you're more than likely going to experience a little bit more fatigue, possibly an inability to get a good night's sleep. There could be some, okay, I feel tired, but I still feel wired. Like I just can't go to sleep. And that's because your circadian rhythm, again, that cortisol pattern is sort of backwards. So instead of it rising in the morning and then falling throughout the day and lowest at night, it does the opposite of that. It's low in the morning and then it gets higher throughout the day and it's highest at night. So that sometimes can go along with this resistant stage of stress. So lastly, there's the exhaustion stage of stress. And this is literally when the body has exhausted all of its energy. Like it literally just doesn't have any more. And so there's tons of fatigue no matter how much sleep that you get. That's a really hallmark symptom that you're in that exhaustion stage of stress, is that it doesn't matter. Like you could literally get like 12 hours of sleep and you don't feel refreshed. Sometimes there's depression. There's usually constipation because remember in the alarm stage, like we're going a lot to the bathroom, like it's overactive. But a lot of times in the exhaustion stage, again, digestion takes energy. So if there's not energy to move what we eat through our digestive system and to expel it properly, then we are going to have a sluggish digestive system. Also, dry skin, hair, and nails. There can also be some adrenal exhaustion, of course. Like our cortisol levels are literally like nada. That's why we don't have any energy, is because our cortisol just can't mount a response and can't get to any appropriate level so that we do have energy to focus throughout the day. And oftentimes our thyroid is under functioning. So, some of these are kind of indicative and go along with, and too, with the metabolic patterns with our metabolism, with a slow metabolism, because we burn it out basically. So let's go down and look at the metabolic patterns. And metabolic, I really want to look at what's going on the inside. And really, stress highly depletes your minerals. And so this is an easy way for me to assess, other than physical symptoms, right? There's definitely those. But this is the way I like to look and get a good picture of a stress pattern to see what stage of stress somebody's in, is to look at a hair test. So I'm going to show you, or well, not show you, but kind of tell you what I see on a hair test and how I know what stage of stress they're in. There are other factors, but these are some of the more hallmark factors. But I'm going to also give a little bit of description, like example, high potassium, what some of the signs and symptoms might be of high potassium. So if you don't, not at this part of your journey that you want to invest in a hair test, then maybe you could kind of figure it out based on what I'm going to share would be the symptoms of these things. So let's first start off with alarm stage. So in the alarm stage, obviously our body is literally just burning through minerals so fast. And the first ones to get burned through the quickest, because again, if we're in that alarm stage, we're like in fight or flight all the time. And so it's really taxing out our adrenals. And our adrenals need a lot of sodium and potassium to work properly. And so a lot of times in an alarm stage on a hair test, I'll see really high sodium and potassium. And high on a hair test doesn't necessarily mean that there's enough. A lot of times it means that our body is using that quicker. It's being wasted. That's what we like to call it. And wasted just means it's just like you're pouring a bucket over. It's just a lot of it's leaking out. And that doesn't mean that you have a lot of water left over. It means that a lot is being poured out. So a lot of times that's what it means when you see a very high, like a sodium potassium level on a hair test. It means that your body's running through it really quickly. So just a few signs and symptoms of high potassium and high sodium. I'm going to group these together. So first, potassium, if it's high, a lot of times there'll be high blood sugar. There will be muscle spasms, muscle weakness, fast metabolism. Remember, it's just going. Even depression can be associated with a high potassium level. High sodium, often you'll see headaches, high blood pressure again there, irritability, nervousness, water retention, because again, the cells can't properly get into, the water can't properly get into the cell. So you're going to see it your body holding on to a lot of that. And there could be some headaches also with high sodium. So that is a little bit about metabolic patterns in the alarm stage. Again, a lot of times you're going to see high sodium and potassium, and sometimes that will push down calcium and magnesium. When we're thinking about a hair test, I usually look at the main 4 macro minerals first, which are calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. And so this really tells you a lot, especially with our stress patterns. And so high sodium and potassium, a lot of times they'll be low magnesium and calcium. So I want to give you a little bit of information on what low calcium and magnesium levels could look like. Low calcium could look like anxiety. It could look like a little bit of insomnia. It could look like allergies is associated with that. Low magnesium, depression is associated with that. PMS type symptoms, adrenal issues, which obviously this could go into other things, but I'm just giving you a little bit of context here in case you don't want to get a hair test done or you're not where you want to do that right now. But low magnesium, it could mean like hyperactivity. You just kind of can't focus. Anxiety could definitely go along with that. So that is a few signs and symptoms of low calcium and magnesium, which is often indicative of being in the alarm stage. So in the resistance stage, this is kind of the in-between. And oftentimes it will look like on a hair test with the main 4 minerals, everything will be low because your body has run through a lot of the sodium and potassium, and you're kind of in the middle, right? You've got this, it's balanced, but it's all really, really low because again, you've depleted a lot of these minerals during the alarm stage. But it's really when you're transitioning into the more exhaustion stage of stress that you're going to see this main 4 minerals to really look womp-sided again. And what I mean by that is in the exhaustion stage, sodium, potassium are lower, and calcium and magnesium are really, really high. Again, they're not in the optimal range. They're in that your body's running through them extremely quickly. So low sodium and potassium, what does that kind of look like? It could be associated, low sodium can be associated with allergies. It could be bloating, depression, dizziness, fatigue. You kind of have a low blood pressure, low blood sugar. It could also, in low potassium, it could look like constipation and fatigue. A lot of these are associated with that exhaustion stage anyway, but even irregular heartbeats, low blood pressure and blood sugar. So it's just kind of everything slowing down. And then the high calcium and magnesium levels, remember, kind of switched here. So high calcium, you might have excessive thirst. Muscle aches can go along with high calcium, because you have to think about if your calcium is extremely high and your body's sort of burning through it really quickly, it's actually moving from the bones into the tissues, which causes a lot of issues, right? Calcium should be in the bones. And so whenever we go through these stages of stress, it's kind of like a protective mechanism that our calcium leaves the bones and goes into our tissues to kind of protect and make this calcium shell around our cells, which we don't want. That makes it extremely hard for things to get in the cell, which we want. We want things to be able to leave and enter the cell as it should, but this kind of makes it to where they can't do that. And so there are lots of things that are associated with high calcium, but those were a few. Definitely stiff joints, fatigue, achiness, because again, that calcium is kind of sharp and it's in your tissue, so you can kind of have a picture of what that would look like. And then high magnesium, a few things that are associated with this: depression, fatigue, lethargy, muscle weakness, even low blood pressure. So just a few things that you might could correlate with high magnesium. And so in the exhaustion stage, your body is just literally can't mount a response. So it does burn through minerals slower, yet it's still trying to compensate. So I hope this gives you a good idea of like, how do you know what stage of stress you're in? Because here's the thing, knowing this information, seeing what stage of stress you're in, how can you get a good plan of where you're going without knowing where you are? So which one of these seems more like where you're at right now? I've given you some signs and symptoms. I've told you a little bit about the metabolic patterns, about the physical symptoms. Again, if you did not go watch last week's video, I'm going to link it in the description. Go watch that. It's pretty short. I give you a good succinct idea of these are the stages. And then in this video, how do you know what stage that you're in? Really, the best way to know is to get a hair test. So if that's something that you've been looking at, I would love to answer any questions you have about that. I love to use the hair test to really guide my clients in helping them to get back to their best self in the most efficient and effective way. Because while a hair test is just one piece of the puzzle that I use, it is a good piece of the puzzle, right? It does help to know what stage of stress are you in? How can you help support your body in these specific areas so that you can get a balanced mineral profile, and so that you can get your body to where it will have the greatest chance of healing? Because if you leave out this one piece of the puzzle, a lot of times it'll just take longer and it'll be a little bit more of an arduous process. And I don't want that for you guys. So I'm going to link ways that we can work together in the description of this video. If you have any questions at all, you can definitely comment below this video, or you can email me. I have my email in the description of this video. So make sure to check back. I put out a video every single week on a different topic, on a particular question. So if you have a topic that you'd love me to cover, let me know. I'd love to do that for you. And I will see you back on the next video.